Stuff there, and good morning, everyone. We've got a terror regime that is on the ropes. Major strikes overnight take out more Iranian leaders. First, we have dramatic new CENTCOM video showing that U.S. fighter jets taking off from an aircraft carrier during Operation Epic Fury. That's a 24/7 operation. Iran's ability to spread its radical agenda in the Middle East being dismantled piece by piece. And the IDF announcing that between the Israelis and the U.S. military, they have taken out two of that regime's top officials who were still alive as of yesterday. They have been eliminated as of now. Good morning, everybody. I'm Bill Hemmer, with me Irish last today here.
Good morning. We're all today, indeed. Right, I'm Dana Perino, and this is America's Newsroom. That development overnight feels very significant, so we're going to get you all caught up. So what's left of Iran's military is now only a shell of its former self, as the United States and Israel continue pounding targets inside the Islamic Republic. And frankly, there's just nowhere to hide. The IDF confirming that a top Iranian official who was really calling the shots there, now killed in an overnight strike, as well as the head of a notorious and awful security force. Also, major headlines from overnight: drones and rockets targeting the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad, Iraq, fired by terrorist groups working in Iraq that are backed by Iran. Now, as the fighting rages on, President Trump saying that the regime's military assets are basically obliterated.
They've been a terror for 47 years. And now, I guess, the world, through the United States, with the help of Israel, is doing what should have been done many years ago. Since the beginning of the conflict, we've struck more than 7,000 targets across Iran. We've achieved a 90% reduction in their ballistic missile launches and a 95% reduction in drone attacks. The missiles are trickling in now at very low levels because they don't have too many missiles left.
Right now, let's get to it. Mark Meredith reports from the White House. Joey Jones, analysis on the big picture. Trey Yingst reports from Tel Aviv, and that is where we begin today in Israel. Trey, hello.
Bill, good morning. Major strikes overnight targeting the Iranian capital of Tehran, taking out top official Ali Larijani. Larijani served as the secretary to Iran's Supreme National Security Council, and he was largely seen as the de facto leader in Iran following the opening strikes of Operation Epic Fury. Even on Friday, he was in the streets of Tehran for Quds Day, directly threatening the United States in live TV interviews. He was taken out in one strike. In another strike, a top commander from Iran's IRGC Basij forces, Gholam Reza Soleimani. This was a joint U.S. and Israeli effort on the intelligence level. Fox News has learned from a senior official here, talking about the efforts to go into the Iranian regime leadership, infiltrate it on an intelligence level, and then conduct these strikes to take out these top officials. Israel's Defense Minister Israel Katz speaking today about those operations.
U.S. President Trump spoke about the high rate of turnover within Iran's leadership. When morning breaks in Washington, we will update him that the high rate of turnover is continuing and even accelerating following the elimination of two of the most senior remaining figures.
Just last hour, Israel launched a new wave of strikes against the Iranian regime. You can see in some of this video released by the IDF over the weekend, they are systematically, alongside American counterparts, destroying the military infrastructure of the Iranians, going target by target. The Iranians are still responding with some ballistic missile fire toward Israel. And overnight, an Iran-backed Iraqi Shia militia targeting the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. You can see some smoke and an explosion rising from the horizon there in the Iraqi capital. There were no injuries reported at that location. In northern Israel overnight, the Iran-backed Lebanese militant group Hezbollah fired rockets over the border toward the northern community of Nahariya. At least 6 people were injured, flames rising from this neighborhood in the northern part of the country. President Trump was asked over the weekend about the possibility of a deal with the Iranian regime.
Now into the third week of this bombing campaign, what would that deal look like? What are the ask that you're making of the government?
They want to make a deal. They're talking to our people. I don't know if they say that to you. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Don't forget, they are a country that for years, I didn't know this until recently, they're a country based on disinformation. And now they're using disinformation plus AI. And that's a terrible situation. That's a terrible situation.
While the primary focus remains on Iran, Israel is still striking the Iran-backed Lebanese militant group Hezbollah. This video here in the aftermath of those strikes in the Dakhla neighborhood of southern Beirut. This is a Hezbollah stronghold where they are launching many of the commands to fire on Israel from. We also know more Israeli ground forces are moving into southern Lebanon to take the fight against Hezbollah. They are supported by tank units along the border, and you can see this daytime video of those IDF ground forces operating there in southern Lebanon. The big news today, though, Ali Larijani, this top Iranian official, taken out overnight in a strike against Tehran.
No doubt significant. Trey, thanks. Great job over there in Israel. From Tel Aviv, Trey Yingst leading our coverage. Thank you, Dana.
And at the White House, President Trump preparing to welcome Ireland's prime minister while also working to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Mark Meredith has the latest. Hi, Mark.
Dana, good morning to you. The White House wants U.S. allies from Europe to Asia to step up and provide military support to protect crucial shipping lanes in the Strait of Hormuz. So far, European leaders are reluctant, preferring instead to sit on the sidelines.
They should be thanking me because many of them get 90%. China, as an example, should be thanking us, but I don't expect to thank you, but they should be thanking us. Japan gets 95%, China 91%. Many of the countries, South Korea gets a tremendous percentage of their oil and therefore their energy from the straits, or as they call it, the strait.
So the longer the strait remains closed or choked off, the higher the price of oil climbs. The president insists this is only a short-term problem and that this war will not drag on, but Democrats say they see no off-ramp.
Donald Trump created a mess in the Middle East, and he clearly has no plan for how to end it. And that is a huge problem for our country. War. Unneeded, unnecessary, endless war.
Axios reporting today the president's special envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, will be up on the Hill to brief a small bipartisan group of senators about the situation. U.S. Central Command says so far Operation Epic Fury has struck 7,000 targets, damaged or destroyed 100 Iranian vessels, taken out countless Iranian facilities, including command and control centers and ballistic missile sites. The president says he's been getting support from Democrats, people across the aisle, including a former president who he says he spoke with recently about Iran. Now, Trump did not say who this former president was that he spoke with. The Associated Press reached out to representatives of all the living former presidents, and none were aware of any recent conversations Trump had with their bosses about Iran. We'll see if President Trump elaborates any further when he welcomes the Irish Prime Minister within the next hour.
Great.
Dana.
I'm noticing the blossoms behind you, too, so lots happening.
And the fountain's green. They even turned the fountain green.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Good to see you.
Bet.
In 2 weeks, we have decimated them. They have no Navy. They have no Air Force. They have no anti-aircraft weapons. They have no leadership. The leadership is gone. But then they set up a new leadership to go and name a new leader, and that leadership is gone.
That from yesterday afternoon. Let's update you on what we have seen from Sunday afternoon into Monday afternoon. All right, this is a 24-hour snapshot from March 15th to March 16th. What we can see here are confirmed strikes down here in the Persian Gulf, which we've talked about, trying to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. However that comes about, major task, big responsibility. Also reports of explosions, too, again, on the same side, the south side and the southwestern and southern side of Iran. Throughout Tehran, the capital city, on behalf of the Israelis and the American Air Force, a lot of hits hitting Tehran as well. But what has developed also is this second front, okay? Going to move you west now, northern Israel, southern part of Lebanon. This is the ancient city of Tyre. There's a river here called the Litani River, and it runs basically this way, west to east, about 18 miles north of the Israeli border. Going back to 1982, this is a buffer zone, you could argue, that the Israelis have always wanted to protect, to give them separation from the Israelis living in northern Israel and Hezbollah operating in southern Lebanon. And I can show you right here, every blue dot here is a claimed attack by Hezbollah. All right, there's a lot of them right here, and these are IDF positions right here along the border, and you've got a hit here just across the southern border of Israel. So keep an eye on that. You've got a two-front war now with the Israelis. This is the Iranian missile drone attacks that have been targeted specifically at the United Arab Emirates, all right, the UAE, from February 28th, the day the war started, to March 16th. That's an 18-day period. On the graph, you hear You see rather drones in orange. You've got ballistic missiles in yellow. You got cruise missiles in blue. I want to show you something, all right? This is when the war started. That was all the incoming the UAE was taking, all right? 18 days later, look at these lines. And this is what the Pentagon and this is what the president's saying is a mark of true success right now in this war. It's popping. It's not zero, by the way, but it's considerably fewer than before. Joey Jones with us, sir. Nice to see you this morning. And
morning, guys.
Good day to you. I mean, how do you rate it right now in terms of a military strategy and the efficacy we have seen?
Yeah, the big debate is when we have a military, even our Navy, built to do conventional military battle, and we go into a place like Iran, we know they've been building their conventional capabilities, but now it's almost like going into the guerrilla warfare part of it, the part where they're doing small drones that fly low and can't be detected, things like that. The Strait of Hormuz is really interesting to me. We have a gap in our abilities, and the administration obviously isn't going to talk about it, but I think that's one of the reasons why they're asking other countries to be involved. This Avenger-class mine countermeasure capability we had, they were wooden hull boats that we took them out of the Middle East in January. We were bringing in what's called an LCS, and they call it the little crappy ship because it doesn't do anything it's supposed to do. And so it hadn't been tested in battle. I think they're just now bringing them over. Actually, there's a couple from Asia I think they're bringing over. And what it does is it expedites the counter mine process with its capabilities, but the Avenger is not very good at it. So right now, our best counter mine capability are small kind of unmanned boats and hands-on procedures from probably Navy EOD techs, which is capable and functional, but it's really slow. It's an arduous process. Now, the other side of that is I don't think the Strait is really mined because mines aren't discriminate and there are ships getting through. We also bombed everywhere we think those mines could have been deployed from. These mines are like, the size of this table. You have to put them on a rail car to get them to where you want them. They're not something you just put in a fishing boat and drop out, or at least not the most effective ones. And so if it's not mines that has the Strait closed, it's really this capability through drones because they fly low, they fly slow. We can defeat them all day long if we know where they are, but we don't know where they are till it's almost too late because they're hard to spot.
There's an op-ed in Al Jazeera by Muhammad Saloom, and I just want to read one line to you. When you look at what has actually happened to Iran's principal instruments of power, the picture is not one of U.S. failure. It is one of systematic, phased degradation of a threat that previous administrations allowed to grow. Wanted to ask you about the breaking news about Larijani and also the head of the Baji force being killed overnight. And I'm curious what you would say, what do you imagine is happening amongst the troops of the Iranian forces when every leader that they're thinking is next is gone?
Have you seen the Spider-Man meme where there are three Spider-Men all pointing at each other?
Yes.
There has to be a moment of that where who is the mole? Where's the human intelligence coming from? How are we 3 weeks into this? The Iranian leadership has taken every countermeasure possible, everything they can to stay covert, to not allow the United States or Israel to know where they are, what they're doing. And it seems like at a moment's notice, they can take out the head of pretty much anything. And so I think that is the strategy. The strategy is to sow enough dissent among those that may be in leadership that you pick one off. You get one to turn, to say, hey.
But do troops start to walk away? Do they?
I don't know because I don't know, one, I don't know how much they know about what's happening everywhere else.
Okay.
I don't know that, my experience is not that in Iran, it's that in other places that are desolate, that don't have technology, and you bring in these 6 to 8-year-old kids and you put them in madrasas and you program them so that by the time they're 18 to 21 years old, reason is not a part of their thinking. I don't know how that applies to the RGC or the Quds Force or the other elements within the police and military of Iran, but in my opinion and in my experience, radical Islamic ideology is something unlike any foe we've ever fought. It's not communism or statehood. It's an ideology that says, hey, if I die, that's okay.
Larijani's a big deal, and so is the head of the Basij force as well. And apparently there's reports that several hundred have been taken out. We'll wait on that to confirm it. You're exactly right, whether it's the Mossad or the CIA, whether it's insiders in Iran or maybe Lebanon or Iraq itself, they are working with the Israelis and they're working with us. The White House is saying the president's not going to relent on this until the mission is accomplished, all right? Wall Street Journal, here we go. Iran will define Trump's legacy. He has a strong case to make, but if he backs down, the cost will be profound. How do you measure that today, Joey?
Yeah, the cost right now is however many billion a day to keep it going, and hoping and praying things that have happened so far, such as the refueler going down, don't happen again. That's the human toll. But when you look at half the troops we've lost were essentially non-enemy fire. It wasn't necessarily we were at battle. What is the cost to continue this and see it through? If you can keep our troops alive and safe, which is the main goal here, and keeping them off the ground helps do that, then you at least want your enemy to think you can do this as long as you need to. And I think that should be the messaging from the White House. Take the arrows right now. Take the criticism from Democrats and Republicans and media, because strategically, they're knocking them out.
I think what Walter Russell Mead's arguing is that victory is your only option here.
Yeah, it is. Israel's, I forgot what they call it, but the cutting the grass.
Mowing the lawn.
Mowing the lawn. We can't do that. We can't.
Yeah.
We mowed the lawn for 20 years. We can't do that.
No.
Thank you, Joey.
See you on the 5?
Yeah, we'll see you this
Looking
evening.
forward to it. Great. Thanks for being here today. Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.